Did you always know that you wanted to be a voice actor?
Oh, actually, when I was a little kid, I mean, I came into this as a child actor. Like I did on camera, I did a bunch of other stuff. And I was just this kid that was precocious, would go up and talk to anybody about anything. I always kind of had to be the center of attention. Like I was that kid. So this was basically an outlet for me then. My career's taken a bunch of different twists and turns because when you're a kid, there's not as many voiceover opportunities available to you, or at least there weren't then. There are more now. But back then, they would use adults to play kids all the time. So unless there was a project where they specifically said they wanted children for the role, we're kind of asked out, because an adult is going to be able to take direction more. They're going to not need as much time. They can work longer. Like there's just a bunch of reasons you would hire an adult if they're able to.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I think the first voiceover job that I did was Peanuts. And I played Linus in one of these Peanuts specials where they go to grandma's house or whatever. And for that, they were very specific that they wanted actual children for the parts. So that was kind of like my first foot in the door in terms of voice acting. But there weren't a ton of parts because of what I just said. So it wasn't until I started actually getting older that I started getting more voiceover opportunities. There were some exceptions. Like I was in this animated series that they did for Back to the Future. I played one of Doc Brown's kids.
Oh wow! Yeah,
I was the smart one. Yeah, I even remember the line that I had to say to get the part, the audition line.
What was that?
I was probably the only kid who could even say this. And it was, I'm computing the logarithmic equivalence of the atomic weights of certain isotopes found in the lanthanide series of rare earth elements.
Holy shit.
And then you hear Doc Brown go, again? And so I mean, that was my audition copy. And I even knew what that meant at the time because
I don't even know what that means now.
Studying the periodic table. Well, you've seen the periodic table, right?
Yeah.
There's the big part and then they're the two rows at the bottom.
Yeah.
Those are rare elements, and so there's the lanthanide series and the actinide series, and so he's computing the logarithmic equivalence of the atomic weights of certain elements found in that series. I was a nerdy kid, man, and now I'm a nerdy adult.
Like, how did you become Anduin? What was that like? When did you? Because obviously you've been playing it before you became Anduin.
And I was bored before I became in. My friend who got me into it, his name was also Josh. He had a friend named Micah, who I became friends with, and Micah played a druid. And this was back in vanilla. And I loved how he could just stealth places and do other things and heal himself and I love that aspect of the gameplay. So I became a druid. And so when we did that, Josh always wanted to go horde. That's kind of what he wanted, to be an undead warlock. So I rolled a Tauren. We started doing that. At that point, Anduin was basically just like the snot-nosed kid in the castle who, whenever we went to try to get Stormwind, I tried to attack him. He wasn't actionable, so you couldn't attack him. Which really bummed me out. And then,
so you wanted to attack?
I wanted to attack
Anduin effectively, eventually.
Yes. And so it wasn't. I mean, I played the game for a couple of years. I think I actually was probably at the point where it was time for me to take a bit of a break because WoW was kind of taking over a little too much of my life. But right at that time, like, this audition came through, and I immediately recognized it as like, this is World of Warcraft. This is the king. This is Anduin. Oh my god! And so I knew exactly what they were talking about when I was reading the script. I knew the locales they were discussing, and so even though I wasn't an Alliance character, like, I didn't necessarily join Horde because I hated the Alliance or anything like that. It was just a different thing, and I really liked the Tauren just on their own. I got really excited, and I was like, this is awesome. And so when I prepared the audition, I didn't have like as much gear as I have now, but I still had a place to audition in my house. And so I auditioned for this, and in my head, I felt confident. I was like, I immediately just got excited about it, and I was like, I'm like, nobody's going to know this game like I know this game. None of the actors that are auditioning for this are going to know this like I know this. And I mean, I guess it came through in my read because I think I maybe had one callback for it, and then I was booked, and I kind of just knew I was going to get it. Like, I never approach roles that confidently. Every actor, I feel, has like the imposter syndrome, where you always feel like you're a fraud, you're a hack, and it's only like a moment of time until everybody finds out. But everybody's got it. Everybody's got it. And this was just one character where I was just like, I know this character. I know this. The only other character that I've ever had that kind of confidence with was Spider-Man, and that's because I was obsessed with Spider-Man growing up. I would read the comics, and when it was my time to audition to be Spider-Man, I'm like, I know this guy.
Yeah.
But I felt like I knew Anduin, and yeah. So I mean, I got that role, and I think that his stuff with me started in Pandaria, in Mists of Pandaria. That's when they really started breaking out his storyline.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what it was. It was really no different than any other voiceover audition, where basically you just get called by your agent. You don't get told a whole lot of details about it, but they did say it was for World of Warcraft. Again, I immediately knew who they were talking about when they said Anduin. And so I just kind of did the voice that I had in my head, and which was informed by a lot of time playing WoW.
Yeah, I can imagine, because I know this is sort of biased, but I can't imagine anyone else playing Anduin. Like, if Blizzard ever gets back to making a movie, they just need to put you as Anduin in the movie.
I hope it's animated if they do it, so I can. or there's a time shift and he's a little bit older, and then I can Anduin. Yeah. I mean, I've been blonde before. I can go blonde again.
Yeah. I think one of the questions we have to get to this time of the world where the world is in at the moment, what's changed since, 2 years ago? You're making cinematics, you're going in, you have all of the people around you, you're probably sharing a booth with like 3 or 4 different people, playing off one another. COVID happens. Suddenly, everything changes. How?
Well, basically, you can't do any kind of in-person sessions. Like nothing. And
is that hard, by the way? Not being able to do in person. Was that like a shift? Like you had to get used to it?
It's different because Blizzard, I'd say almost uniquely, goes above and beyond in terms of catering to the actors and having like a really, really amazing atmosphere for the actors to work in. Usually when you're doing voiceover, you don't have a lot of time to prepare. You don't. You get your script the day of the session, you have a little bit of time to look it over, and then you go in and you do it. Whereas with Blizzard, I mean, for a lot of these really pivotal cinematics, they'll get the actors together. We'll have Taryn and Christy and our wonderful voice director Andrea there, and we'll kind of just play, where they'll throw us a fictional situation that is completely out of the world of WoW, maybe more applicable to today's world and what's happening in our current lives, and they'll give us the situation. They'll say you're this, and they'll have us improv, and the improv will not be WoW related. But the themes and the undercurrents will still have a very, very specific parallel to the events.
So there's an emotional link, sort of.
So yeah, it's to explore those emotional links. It's to explore those in a different character, even like yourself. So you can kind of bring parts of you to this performance. Yeah. And basically, we would go into one of the studios that we would record in, and they have like a big room. Like they'll have like small vocal booths, but then they'll also have like a really big room that you could probably fit a band in to record a band.
Wow. Okay.
And that way we can actually like literally act it out, like with movement and everything and all of that, and we'll just improv there for like an hour. And
sounds cool.
They'll videotape that improv, and then we'll kind of use that as a jumping off point to talk about our characters, to talk about how this parallels to something that we've experienced, like really just to see what else is there aside from what the script calls for. And all of that goes away when we aren't able to act opposite each other. And then even for like the Sour, like a lot of in the last expansion, a lot of the Sourfang stuff, I was in there with the actor who played Sourfang, basically just acting face to face. Even when we were doing the Anthony Morgado, is it Andrew or Anthony? Oh my God. I'm so sorry, Andrew or Anthony. I have baby brain because we were up way too late last night playing video games with the family. And I'm forgetting all. I want to say it's Andrew. It's Andrew Morgado. Yeah, I'm terrible with names.
Don't worry,
I have friends, so it's even more embarrassing.
I do this as a job, and I sometimes forget characters' names just completely. It's gone.
Worst, but yeah. So I mean, we basically would act face to face, and all that goes out the window, and and now you're doing it here. And I mean, I have a vocal booth behind this backdrop.
Did you have to set that up specifically for the COVID thing, or did you have that set up even before?
A lot of voice actors did. I've had this set up for probably almost 10 years now. There's different kinds of voiceover jobs. There's the stuff like for animation, and then there's the stuff where you're doing commercials. There's stuff where you're doing promo, where when you're watching TV and some guy comes on that says, coming up next, blah, 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 and he tells you what show's coming up next. That's promo. And so I would do a lot of that. And for that, you're kind of on call because they're doing these every day. You'll have to change, if it's 8/7 Central or whatever, you got to do all these time updates. So, you need to be available. And so for that kind of stuff, I've had this booth set up because, 10 years ago, I did a ton of promo jobs, and they wouldn't even hire you unless you had a home setup. And so that was 10 years ago. And so I set that up, and it's been probably one of the best investments I've made. But it really helped with COVID because I already had a studio quality place to record from I could do, and I have the equipment to do broadcast quality audio. That immediately put me into a mentally just more secure place because I knew that it really wasn't going to cut into my work as much, not being able to go to a studio. That being said, the first month of COVID sucked kind of across the board because nobody really knew how this was going to all shake out. And a lot of actors didn't have a home setup. So if you had an ensemble record with, 10 actors and only 2 of them had a setup, then how are you going to get the audio from these other 8 actors who might not even have a treated space to record in that's going to sound correct? Because, if you're recording in a room that's not treated, like this room that I'm in right now is like my booth is back there and the booth is treated.
Okay.
This room is not treated right now. I'm going to treat it, but it's not. So you can hear the room more. You can hear that it's in a kind of echoey space. And that's not suitable for broadcast. It's got to be pretty dead, pretty flat.
Yeah.
And that takes time. And a lot of people don't necessarily know how to do it.
I don't even know how to do it. Like I've legitimately everything that I've done have literally been by accident. That's it. Yeah. So I can imagine you're being thrust into a new situation that obviously interferes with a lot because Shadowlands launches in the middle of all of this. You obviously have cinematics that needs to be worked on.
It sets it back months because they don't know how they're going to do it. Not only that, they have a team of motion capture actors that they have to work with. Again, when you can't do all that, like everything gets set back. Everything.
Wait, so they couldn't do any of the motion cap
in the beginning? Yeah,
in the beginning.
In the first couple months of COVID, before anybody knew what the restrictions were going to be like it was literally a work stoppage.
Wow.
And they didn't know. And I mean, Blizzard really does a good job in terms of getting great sound quality and just everything. So to now have to put out, I think they even talked about, they were thinking about doing an expansion with no audio because they didn't even know if they'd be able to do it. They didn't know if they were going to do voice acting. So they were kind of even kicking around. This is just what I've heard from somebody talking at BlizzCon. But I think they even kicked around the idea of doing like a vocally silent expansion because they didn't know if they were going to be able to record quality performances from everybody.
I'm really glad they didn't because I think the voice acting in World of Warcraft might be some of the best that games have to offer. And based on what you just told me, it really is because of the effort that is being put into it. It's not just a sort of aside, oh, never mind, we'll just get this done so that it's there. There is a lot of focus on it. From the moment that you enter the booth, wherever that might be, right, to where it's done, how long can such a session last?
It depends on the cinematic. If it's one of those things where, like I told you earlier, where they get us together and we're improvising and doing all of that before we actually record, then it could be probably like a 4-hour session. We'll be in there for a good amount of time. But if it's really just, I'd say a cinematic, maybe the length of one of the Anduin Sylvanas cinematics for Shadowlands, maybe a couple of hours where you just kind of are trying different things back and forth. Sometimes you might approach it a little hot or not hot enough or whatever. And so it's a lot of just back and forth to see what works best for that situation.
Has it gotten easier over time? So become quicker versus, say, the very first Anduin cinematic that you had to do?
I'd say so because I think at this point, everybody is so much more familiar. Well, I mean, I'm more familiar with the character. I'm more familiar with where he's gone. You know, the writers also where they hear my voice, they've learned they know to write to that, as well as the story. So I mean, it it seemed, with every session, I'd say it gets more like a more well-oiled machine. And so it does get easier from time to time.
The question that almost in every single one of the posts came through and most people wanted to know, the hardest scene ever for you to voice. Like, which scene really took it out of you? That you had to go, no, I'm not happy, I need to do it again. I
don't think I've had a scene like that I was just dissatisfied and had to keep doing it. I'd say like the hardest one was probably the one where he goes back and visits his father, like where his father died. The Legion scene, because like I really brought myself to a point where I was in tears, and I mean, even though it's acting,
so you actually cried in that moment.
Yeah, a biological response where after a while you got a headache and you got snot and stuff.
Oh yeah,
it's you get physically drained from that, and mentally drained from that, and that was such a pivotal moment in his life that I think was probably the most emotionally draining scene for me to do as a for sure.
How much freedom do you have in the cinematics as an actor? How much can you maybe change something? Let's say this is your line, but the line just feels off. Do you have the ability to go to Steve Denuza or to Taron and say, listen, can I say it like this instead? It doesn't, or is
Absolutely.
it?
Absolutely. They do allow that freedom. Granted, there's really not, I mean, they'll go through so many revisions and so much back and forth before it even gets to us. But by the time it gets to us, it's pretty true to character. There's really not a lot of change, but there might be some little nuance. I mean, there was one thing that I remember Patty ad-libbed in one of the sessions for one of the past things, where it wasn't even so much an ad-lib, it was just she added an extra reference to me as Little Lion, which wasn't initially in the script, but she's referred to Anduin as Little Lion before.
Yeah.
But she used it as a dig right in that point.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in there before. And it made it into the final cinematic because it was perfect. It did everything it needed to do. It added an extra dig from Sylvanas at Anduin, and it was in character. And it
was this during Shadowlands stuff, or was this actually before Shadowlands stuff?
It might have been BFA, or it might have been, I don't remember, but it's definitely something that already came out.
Genuinely, Blizzard doesn't share any future stories with you at all. Like, you've never even gotten a smidge of a breadcrumb of where the story might be going.
I get it maybe 3 or 4 days before the session, and then we record, and then they do the rest of their stuff, and then you guys see it. They leave us in the dark for a very long time.
Do you prefer the fact that they don't give you the story too far in advance?
Yeah, I feel like I have enough time to prepare it. The expansions themselves are so spaced out, and it takes a long time to make these things. It takes a long time to make these cinematics. It's not just something that they go in and knock out in like a week or so. They go through big changes while they are actually developing them. They might get a month or two into it and then kind of change a little bit of it, and so and that all happens before we even see it.
Yeah.
So there's so much time in between these that, if they were to tell me where the story was going to go, it might go through revisions before I actually end up voicing it from the time they told it to me. So I think for me anyway, it's better to just kind of get it when it's in the final sense that it's going to be in the game. Because otherwise, I spend time thinking about stuff that might not even make it through to what the game's going to be. So the way they've been doing it's been working out fine for me. So I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I imagine it's also easier to just not have, say, like you said, not have the wrong scene for months, and then it changes literally days before, and you've already prepared this scene, so now you have to sort of forget everything.
Exactly, because when you're doing this kind of work, it's like you do sit and just think about this stuff for hours. And if they told me something was going to go a certain way, like yesterday, and my session isn't going to be for like another 2 or 3 months, like I've spent 2 or 3 months going down all of those trains of thought and putting all of those ideas in my head.
Yeah.
And that if you've been doing that for months and now all of a sudden you have to completely change it, it's like you can, but you still have all those, and it's going to affect your performance. So
Yeah.
I try to keep a clean slate.
I guess that makes sense. It's very difficult for like any one of us sitting on the outside. You know, obviously we're all thinking.
You're also consuming it as the end viewer, so it's like you're seeing the storyline, and absolutely, if it's a property, a franchise you like, you want to know everything that's going to happen. Boom, 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 boom.
Oh yeah.
But like, they might tell me something, and then that doesn't happen. So I might get excited about this and really go down all this mental preparation path of, oh, this is going to happen, and then it doesn't, and it goes a completely different way, and you know, it's just.
Yeah.